1, 2. Can't nobody out here do it like me. Ain't nobody out here winning like me. Can't nobody out here do it like me. Just like me, like me. Can't nobody out here do it like me. Ain't nobody out here winning like me. Can't nobody out here do it like me. Just like me, like me.
What's up, everybody? Good evening and welcome in to the first of many Aces Wild right here on the Undefeated Sports Network. So for those of you that don't know, same faces, new look. We got a little bit of rebranding going on here. So the new show debuting tonight. We're going to cover a variety of Chicago sports topics with you guys as we have in the past, but a little bit more fun, a little bit more flair, and we've got our guy Mike Hughes joining us here at 8:15 to chat all things Chicago sports, but nothing more important right now than us being reunited, right, Ace?
Yeah, man. For those of you that have followed me and you really for what, 3.5 years now?
Yes, sir.
You and I were doing sport court. I did sport court with another buddy, Alan, for a little while. And sport court was my baby, man. You know, I started with that. It was just to kind of get my feet wet, but it was kind of a generic thing, you know, and Ace has kind of grown in his persona and his love on this network. And I thought, hell, why not make it a little more personable? So that's why we're here on Aces Wild.
Got a great show lined up for you guys. I think we got a troll here with more porridge, please, saying bring back sport court. We are here. It's Ace and I. It's the topics that you guys love with just a little bit better flair. We've both gotten a little bit better in the video editing space since we joined.
Both a little better looking since the last sport court, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, it is what it is. We're here. It's fresh. It's new, guys, but you'll still get the same awesome takes that you've grown to expect from Ace and I over the years. But Ace, I want to get right into it, man. I've been itching to talk about.
You should get that checked.
All right. I've been itching to talk about this news since it broke the other day. So I want to go right into our first topic and talk about Jalen Johnson. So tag you're it. Bears place franchise tag on Jalen Johnson. Can they get a deal done? So when the news broke, it was just the generic notification that a franchise tag's been issued. Comes out a little bit later on in the evening that it's a non-exclusive, meaning that other teams can provide Jalen Johnson an offer, but the Bears have the opportunity to match or rather trump that in their negotiation process. So, Ace, how do you feel about the tag, and do you think that the Bears could have gotten a deal done, without placing the tag on Jalen?
Well, I mean, clearly they weren't able to get a deal done, and that's why the tag is on him. Ryan Poles has been open about this whole thing since really the start of last season, and you know, wanting to get a deal done with Jalen. After the season, same thing. He felt very confident that Jalen wasn't going anywhere. Those were his words, right? Jalen's not going anywhere. He didn't say that about any other players on this team.
I think he said specifically Jalen is a Bear and will remain a Bear.
Yep, absolutely. And, you know, then he was interviewed at the Combine, talked about, you know, some of the numbers and some of the things that they were trying to accommodate with him. And it,
right,
from what I'm hearing, is because the cap went up, he upped his wanting price, you know, his asking price.
Which, honestly, I'm going to stop you right there, Ace, because how crazy is that? Jalen Johnson played immaculate football last year. I think no one will deny that he was definitely top 10, if not top 5 at his position during last season. So, ultimately, I think that, you know, Jalen's definitely asking for whatever he wants, whatever that number is. He probably wants to be paid like a top 4 guy, I'll say. But ultimately, yeah. I think that Ryan Poles does have to recognize the talent that you have here in this player.
I agree.
You can't just throw money at him, but at the same time, if it's, I don't know, $1 million a year that they're arguing over, or, you know, whatever the figure may be, at the end of the day, can you do something with the bonus? Can you do something with the structure to make the contract a little back end heavy that still gets to the number that he wants? There's so many things that you can do, and manipulating the cap space in the NFL is truly a craft. And I think Ryan Poles has done a really good job with getting rid of dead money and, deals that were unfavorable to the Bears in the last few years. But now you have to look at the broader picture and really see what's going on and recognize that you do have a grade at this position. And I just want to take a minute to give you that shout out there, Ace, because Angelo
Angelo 4 is over here watching. He's supposed to be in bed, but I'm all right with him watching. So I got to watch my mouth now because I'll get yelled at.
No. But ultimately, I think it's one of those things where it's tough. You obviously don't want to give Jalen more money than he's worth, but what is he really worth? And what's he worth to another team, right? So now it gives him the opportunity with the non-exclusive tag to go out there and see what other offers teams are fielding. And hopefully in the end, the best result for the Chicago Bears would be that he comes back and says, okay, what you were offering me originally is fair. I'll take the deal. Let's get it done and move forward, right?
Well, yeah. Didn't they even let him do a little trade looking around during the season last year where they were like, well, yeah, go explore trade offers and we'll see, what we can get for you. And there was nothing.
So,
right?
I think the team's been more than fair with him. I think Poles has probably made him a very competitive offer. Obviously, we don't know what the exact details of that deal are, but I would think, you look back at the Roquan Smith deal and kind of how this unraveled. Angelo with the comments there. You look at how this is unraveled, and I keep going back to that Roquan deal, and everything was on the table. Poles felt that he made a more than fair offer to Roquan. He goes to the Ravens ultimately and isn't really a difference maker there. I mean, he's a guy on the field, but he wasn't a guy who was making the same impact that he did on the Chicago Bears, right? So,
right.
I think obviously King Poles has to be cautious and not just give in to what Jalen wants. And I think that's what he's doing here. I think he's really saying, go find a better offer. And if Jalen can, then maybe they will match it just because they feel so strongly about him being a part of this Bears organization in the future. Or maybe they move right on past and just say, okay, if you can go get $3 million a year extra over here, go over there. That's fine.
And that's what I kind of think. Like, I think they have their number. Pulse has done this with everybody. He's got a number for every position, right? And he's stuck with that number. My thought is, okay, Jalen, we got this. We gave you the years you wanted. After your contract, you're still going to be young enough to be able to test free agency and potentially get another contract. But hey, you don't want our money. You don't like the money that we're offering. We're not going to you go out there, see what other teams are going to offer you. And then we'll decide if we want to match that or not, if we think that it's worth that or not.
And really, that was the perfect way to do it, right? Because the ball's ultimately in the Chicago Bears, or I'm sorry, it's not in the Bears' court. It's in Jalen Johnson's court. Go out and find more money. If you do, then we'll talk about it. But guess what? If you don't, now you're going to sit down and sign the contract that we originally offered you, and that's going to be it. End of discussion. I mean, it's not like he's out here getting offered a Scottie Pippen deal that doesn't make sense, right?
Right. I mean, it's obviously you always want what's best for the players. They put their bodies on the line out there. They're the ones that entertain us all. But also at the end of the day, it is a business. Right. Your job as the general manager is to make sure that you're providing reasonable contracts to your players so that your cap space stays flexible. So that if you have a situation where this huge superstar becomes available, you can pay him whatever you need to pay him to get him. Or if you need to make a trade for a guy who has a higher cap, you have the flexibility to bring that guy on. I think you always want the player to get what they deserve. But at the end of the day, also, it's like any relationship. You have to be willing to give and take. Right. Otherwise, it's not a negotiation. It's just a demand. Right. And if you're not going to be flexible with your demands, then it's never going to work.
So one thing to note here, I did compare it earlier in the show to the Roquan Smith deal, but Roquan Smith didn't have an agent. Jalen Johnson does. So that's a huge difference in the negotiation process, right?
Right.
Someone having an agent takes the personal feelings, the emotion out of the negotiation. So, hopefully Jalen's agent is in his ear saying, "Hey, look, they're letting you do this. Tread lightly, so to speak." I know it's not something that we made an overlay for tonight, but you look at the news that broke about Darnell Mooney earlier this week, right? The Bears offered him $10 million a year over 3 years, and he said, "No, that's not enough. I'm just going to play my contract out." And ultimately, what's the market going to be for Darnell Mooney? He's not going to get $10 million a year anywhere after the play that he had last year. And I know some reports have said that, a lot of teams attribute that to Justin Fields not seeing his backside read, and they don't hold the 421-yard season against Darnell Mooney. But realistically, Darnell Mooney wasn't even the second most recent Bear to catch a touchdown pass. That was Chase Claypool, who was on the Miami Dolphins by week 10. So, I don't have a lot of faith that a guy like Darnell Mooney will go somewhere else and get an astounding amount of money. Maybe he takes a very team-friendly deal just to stay on the Bears as a depth piece. I don't know what happens with Darnell. I don't really care what happens with him, honestly. If he's gone, he's gone. If he's still here next year, okay, cool. He's a depth piece.
Right.
At this point in his career is kind of how I view it. But going back to, the illustrious player that Jalen Johnson is, man, it would be a shame to lose him from this organization, especially with what he did last year, his ability to be able to step up in crucial situations, get the pick, get the swat. I mean, his numbers
could have had a few more pick sixes, but
his numbers were way up as opposed to the previous year, and some can attribute that to he was playing harder for a contract. But hey, whatever. If he made his case by doing so, good for him. I think you ultimately have to give credit where it's due, and I'm a big Jalen Johnson fan, so I really hope that the Bears are able to get this deal done.
Yeah, I think, like you said he stepped up. A lot of players always seem to have that little extra in them when it's a contract year, unless your name is Darnell Mooney. But Jalen has 5 interceptions on his career. 4 of them happened last year. So he could have probably had 2 more. Both were prime pick 6 opportunities that hit him in the hand and he dropped them.
You're not wrong.
I'd be happy if he stopped with the money sign on the field and just focused on catching the ball. I do like a little swag, but at the same time, like, do your job first, man, before you worry about getting that money. You know what I mean?
But he did his job. He deserved to talk that talk towards the end of the season.
Towards the end, and then he talked it, and the last few games were pick 6 opportunities that he missed. I'm not saying he's not deserving of the contract, because I believe he rated.
All right, guys. So this is now the Tarbill's Wild Show. I'm kidding. Let's bring Ace back in here. But ultimately, man, I think Jalen Johnson, hell of a player. I think Ryan Poles is smart enough to get the deal done. I think he's doing everything that he can to make sure that the deal does get done. And I think by training camp, we'll see a deal signed. I'm going to say that. That's going to be my prediction 1 for the night.
I think it gets done before the draft.
Really?
Yeah. Well, okay. Because my thought is, like, if he's not going to stay, or if you're not going to match the offer, wouldn't you want to try and replace that productivity in some way? And free agency starts pretty soon here. And then you have the draft. Do you really want to wait till there's no opportunity to sign anybody after this guy decides to go take a outrageous deal somewhere else?
Fair enough. But again, I mean, the Bears have some nice depth at both the corner and safety position, right? They've obviously been very lucky these last few years. Obviously with the addition of Tyreek Stevenson last year coming alive, Jaquan Brisker, just to name a couple. I mean, really, this team has been fortunate in the secondary. Obviously, we're going to miss our guy, Eddie Jackson, or at least I am, as a guy who is an Alabama fan. Roll Tide. it was time to see Eddie go, and for the money, it makes sense. We've already talked about that, but it's still a little gut wrenching when you see a guy like that you'd like to see still on the field. But hey, if they had to get rid of Eddie to give Jalen Johnson the money that they need to give him, I'm, as much as I hate to say it, I'm all for it, man.
Well, not even just Jalen, or not even just Eddie Jackson, but you lost Cody Whitehair, and
Bum,
that I'm not saying he wasn't a bum. I'm just saying
bum.
this team is a younger team, right? And you're going to lose two guys like that were probably leaders on both sides of the ball.
A locker room presence for
right,
sure.
A locker room presence. You're talking about moving on from your quarterback. That's for a little bit later in the show. We'll talk about. But
you're talking about it.
Now you want to like take a chance of losing this guy also. You know,
You're
that's a
talking
lot.
about it.
That's a lot of shuffling the deck in terms of like leaders in your locker room. And I think Jalen is a guy who has
it's
been
the Flus
quiet.
though.
Yeah,
the Flus is a natural born leader, man. He's got nicknames for everybody. Dragon Slayer. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't come up with nicknames like that if you don't have a good camaraderie with
let
the
the
team
Flus
in the locker
loose,
room.
baby. I said that at the end of the season. I wanted them to let him loose, but in like a you're fired type of way. But
instead, he's back and he grew a beard and he kind of looks like an old Jack Steller from Sons of Anarchy. But
a little bit, yeah. Hopefully, the ending for him is a little bit better than the ending for Jack in that show. But you know,
anyways,
whatever.
We're here to talk Chicago sports, not how
we can talk whatever we want. Really, this is our show, Tarbill.
This is true.
Anything we want.
The producer might be mad at us at the end of the show. You never know.
Producer. Oh
wait,
you're looking at the producers of this show, so there is no anger. I mean, we could talk about anything, but yes, we do like to stay towards the Chicago sports realm. But I feel like Ryan Poles right now is in a spot where he hasn't really done a lot wrong, right? Other than the Chase Claypool thing, and you drafted Velus Jones, and he's kind of trash too. But other than that, I mean, I think he's done a lot of good with this roster, and I trust the guy to keep doing what he needs to do to build this roster to win a championship.
Let Poles eat, so to speak, right? But as I just steered you back towards Chicago sports talk, I want to steer you away for a second because a new episode of the New Heights podcast dropped today, and I listened to that while I was at work. And Jason Kelce, 13-year pro in this league, the embodiment of what you would want in an offensive lineman, all pro, Super Bowl winner, parties like there's no tomorrow, not afraid to take his shirt off as an overweight man. Everything that you love about a football player is Jason Kelce, man. Everything you
love about a person. The Kelce boys
did for the city of Philadelphia, and just the speech he gave at the Super Bowl parade, and you know, showing up to Trav's games in the wild outfits that he does, and just all around excellent human being, right? So I just have to say, Jason Kelce, good luck in your future endeavors, sir. But ultimately, I listened to his 43-minute retirement speech in its entirety, and a lot of great things in there. They talked about how today how he had his offensive line coach who had been taping him up for the last 13 years tape him up one last time before he went on the podium, which I thought was really cool, sentimental, obviously, but he threw out the BDN joke one more time and said Nick Foles basically had the biggest dick in the room to go out and say, run the Philly special, and Doug Peterson had the stones to do it. And I thought that was hilarious. He actually said on his podcast that he texted Nick and his wife and asked if it was okay if he made that reference in his speech before he did it, which is just wild in itself. Like, you know, such a funny, fun guy. ultimately, but really has set a tone for the bigger guy, the offensive lineman, to really be a more colorful character and a larger part of what you see in a team, right? Because before Jason Kelsey, there were really there were few offensive linemen that, got the kind of coverage and hype that he did. And the man managed to do it in a way that no one else had. Like I said, he was the embodiment of the offensive lineman position. And I think Philadelphia's got a much stronger offensive line than the Bears do right now. Unfortunately, I think they've got a great backup piece that's going to slide over from guard right into center and take over that spot for Jason, and they'll do just fine. But man, Kelsey retire, and that was something that, as a sports fan, kind of hit you. It hit me more than I thought it would. It's like you've seen this guy so many year in and year out with the fight, the story of rehabbing his body and getting back to being good so he can play and everything like that. And then he just said, my body's had enough. I'm mentally still there, but physically I don't think I can do the rehab for a 17-game season, and I don't want to do that to myself. I want to go out on top. So,
and he seems like a guy who's going to stay retired. You know how
for sure,
some guys retire and they're like, oh well, this person's hurt, so I'm going to jump in on that team. No, I think it was a great career. Obviously, Hall of Famer, right? And I think the way he composed himself, the way you watched, especially the last couple of years, because of the situation of both of them playing in the Super Bowl, he got a lot more hype.
Of course.
You got to see a side of football players that you normally don't get to see. And I want to give credit to both those guys for being guys that are comfortable with who they are, like you said.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think sets a good standard for men everywhere,
Definitely.
But
for sure. But with that being said,
now I don't know if this man has ever had a better intro to his show than we're about to drop on everybody right now. And as a fan of Chicago sports, I really feel like he's going to enjoy this little video that I put together for him.
The honeymoon stage is over. That's my point. It's like, we thought shit was going to be so sweet, and now you're really looking at it and you're like, you know what, maybe she is toxic. And if you add Bellinger into that, I think it's a very successful offseason on top of looking at the prospects that you're. Follow my guys. Always check out their StreamYards, check out their YouTubes up here. They do great stuff, and I listen to them weekly, so you guys should too.
All right, guys, and welcome in our brother, friend of the show, Mike Hughes. What's up, Mike? How we doing tonight, man?
That's so crazy. I'm so happy I was healthy enough to be on this show tonight. That made my week. That was cool. That was sick.
Yeah, hey,
there we go.
You've been good to the show. You've been good to us. I thought, man, he comes in clutch. He's always there when we need him. Michael Jordan. I mean, it came to mind. So, we're glad to have you on. I appreciate you being on. I watched you earlier today. Great stuff. About the Bulls, which we've talked Bulls before, you and I
hate
and Bears. And yeah, the Bears, Justin Fields situation. I mean, where do you want to start? We have Fields trade. We could talk about the Bulls being hopeless right now. The ball's in your court.
I'm gonna throw a lob to Tarbill here because I'm so exhausted from talking about all of it that I'm not excited about talking about any of it. I'm always excited to talk with you guys, but whatever Tarbell's feeling, I'm down.
All right.
There's nothing there that screams to me, can't wait that this is new information.
Got you. Well, with that being said, I'm Bears heavy first and foremost. So we are going to go right into fielding calls. Is there any value left in a trade for Justin Fields? So this is an interesting topic, right? Because ultimately you see the reports that first the Steelers are interested, then they're not interested. They're going to stick with Pickett. You see that other teams like Atlanta want to see what happens with Kirk Cousins. Obviously, Denver released Russell Wilson, so he's going to be available, although I think he's probably as good as washed and done for the effect of this conversation. But y'all can disagree with me if you want. But
I disagree.
With that being said, I think this is a good place for us to start. Mike, what are your thoughts on Fields and the trade value? And after you give us your initial thoughts, tell us in parallel kind of what the lowest you would take for Fields would be.
Oh man, I think first I think you have to look at what the market is, and I think Russell Wilson being added to that is just going to continue that conversation. Baker Mayfield's coming off a comeback player of the year caliber year. Don't know how Joe Flacco won it when he only came in for like 5 games. And DeMar Hamlin, who literally only played 5 games and started in none of them, but whatever, free Baker.
So, Mike, I hate to cut you off, but can I stop you there because I totally agree with you on that.
Thank you, sir.
DeMar Hamlin would not have even been in the conversation had he not made it back to the field after, the horrible medical tragedy that happened to him. But aside from that, I mean, he was primarily a special teams and a backup guy last year.
I mean, and again, shout out to DeMar Hamlin because, beating the odds, that so many people don't get the opportunity to beat. And it's definitely traumatic to do that I would be nervous even taking a dump on a field, nonetheless having a heart attack.
Absolutely.
So I mean, shout out to him because you get another chance at life. But it's not about what happens to you. To me, it's about the comeback, like the actual comeback. And if you came back and didn't do shit, then you didn't really come back. You just kind of came back to life. And I'm not trying to be a dick, but that's the only comeback that there was he came back to life. But with that, I will say this, Tarbill, because since we're having arguments today, I'm willing to argue with you. If I'm Kyle Shanahan and I'm like, man, I just keep getting blown out in the Super Bowl every time I'm in the Super Bowl, and I see the Broncos are paying them 90% of that contract, I'm going, all right, I got Russell Wilson, Christian McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle, and I'm running with it. I love Brock. Brock's great, but Brock's not winning the big one. That's just what it is. I've seen Russ win the big one, and everybody wants to talk about he had a down year. He had a better year than Fields. So that's how 3,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. It wasn't a bad year. Sean Payton fucking sucks. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, what has Sean Payton done other than one? I don't care. Like, Sean Payton and Mike McCarthy are in the same breath to me, and no one wants to have that conversation because Drew Brees kept them afloat a little bit longer than Rodgers kept McCarthy. But with
a risky onside kick call.
Exactly. And it's like, it's always this. It's always the Minnesota Miracle. It's always this excuse. It's always that excuse. It's always Brees and his 6 broken ribs. I don't care. At the end of the day, without Drew Brees, who is Sean Payton other than a cheater? That's just really what it is.
Or a guy who was played by Kevin James in a low budget.
And that was a horrible movie, which didn't need the food poisoning scene, but I appreciated it. But yeah, I think to get back on that for real, it's like, I think you're going to have to wait out Big Kirko. I think you're going to have to wait out Baker and see if he's going back with Mike Evans in Tampa, which has to. That has to have been the incentive for Mike Evans to want to come back, other than obviously the payday. But, it's one of those things to where you're just going to have to wait. And then as it pertains to the draft capital, nah, bro. I want to sit here and say I would be willing to do a third, but I'm not. Like, I'm really not willing to do a third because I know what the ceiling could be if you do it right. So if you win a Super Bowl with Justin Fields next year and you're Atlanta or you're Seattle or you're Pittsburgh, and all I got out of it was a 3rd round pick that's pretty much a 4th round pick, I'm pissed.
Right.
So let me ask you this, Mike. Let's say 4th round is the best you get offered for Fields. What do you think the Bears do? Do they just hold on to him and hope that maybe during the season a quarterback goes down and you're like, oh, hey, look, we got Fields in the back ready to go for you? Or do you just move him for that 4th round because you don't want to have there be this weird situation in the locker room between him and Caleb or whoever the
controversy between him and
I think I do exactly what the Commanders tried to do with Chase Young. I think we'll see how the season plays out. I'd let Caleb sit. If that was the case, I'd say, Caleb, you're going to sit. You're going to learn under Waldron. You're going to learn watching Fields because no one knows that Caleb Williams, whether it's Pac-12 or not, Caleb can move the ball too with his legs. I mean, Caleb has over 27 rushing touchdowns in the Pac-12 in 3 seasons. He has over 960 yards rushing. He's a pretty mobile quarterback as well. Not the most mobile, but he's mobile. And I think it's going to be one of those things for me where it's like, okay, well, we want to contend and we want to go to a playoffs. So let's do that. You know what I mean? Let's run that with Justin.
Right.
Let's have Justin say, hey, listen, at the end of the day, we're not picking up your 5th year. We're not trading you. We're just going to ride out this season. If you win the Super Bowl, you're about to get paid by the next franchise that wants to get you in free agency. And going into the following year, we'll have Caleb Williams and we'll either lay in that bed or we'll either be partying like it's 1985. And that's really what it is.
So I got to counter that a little bit though, Mike.
Sure. Oh, Tarbill, before you go, it's a horrible idea. I don't want both of them. But if you're telling me I'm just giving you a 4th for a generational talent quarterback, I'd rather keep him.
No, I agree with you on that part. No, what I wanted to counter was if the Bears win the Super Bowl with Fields next year, which I'm not saying that's going to happen. I think obviously he's gone, but in the scenario that we laid out here, if the Bears get offered a 4th, they decide to keep Fields, they sit Caleb and they tell Fields, all right, we're rolling with you. We're not picking up your option. If he wins the Super Bowl with them, they are undoubtedly picking up his option and dealing Caleb Williams somewhere else, right?
Well, I think the problem is you have that window of picking up that 5th year option. So by the time the Super Bowl happens, Fields isn't even, he's gone. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying Super Bowl. I'm just saying, let's say they make the playoffs, win a playoff game, kind of go out on a high note. That would literally, Ryan Poles would look really bad. Everyone in that office, everyone in that organization would look really bad. It'd look like Trey Lance when you're still rocking with Brock Purdy. That looked horrible, and it still looks horrible to this day. But it's like at the end of the day, you kind of have to start to have a conversation. And if Justin Fields just won you a playoff game, how can you move on from him, even though you saw it before? We just talked about San Fran, and I'm no Brock Purdy slander. I love big cock Brock. Brock does his thing. But, I think at the end of the day, the thing about Brock was, yeah, listen, he's super cheap. The last pick of the draft, but he gets it done. And Trey Lance, sure, you got taken number 3 overall, but if you're a serious organization, I don't care if you got taken 1 or 3 or the very last fucking pick. Like, pardon my language today. I don't know what's happening. But
you're all good, brother.
I say fuck all the time.
Exactly. But it's Angelo just such a horrible influence. But I think at the end of the day, man, no matter what happens, like, I'm not selling. I'm not selling for anything less than what I've seen. And what I've seen is a guy who's breaking NFL single game records, a guy who's rushed over 1,000 yards a season, a guy who at Ohio State broke 6 ribs and then carved up Dabo Swinney and went to a national championship. Like, that's a guy I know. And at the end of the day, a 4th round pick is crazy.
Is a 3rd round pick crazy?
Out of your box.
You're not accepting anything less.
I think if you don't get a second round, if you don't get a 2nd round pick for Justin, then you failed in this entire thing. If that's what you're going to do is move on from Justin, you need to recoup that 2nd round pick that you lost. And I think that's what they're hoping to get. But I think all these quarterbacks now with Russ getting there, Baker, you have Cousins, it's really put a wrench in the Bears' plans. I think as fans, we may have overestimated the value at which other teams viewed Fields as. We watch him every week. We watch the big explosive runs, the escape out of the pocket when he's down, break 4 tackles and run for 35 yards. And like, we see those, but teams look at this position differently.
Yeah.
So Ace, I will counter that and say, you look at most of the season last year, especially when Fields came back, you had guys in the national media like Mike Greenberg, for one, saying that Fields is the guy. How do you move off of him if you're the Bears? And then the Bears magically land into the number 1 pick, and the narrative shifted so much. I think we forget what Justin Fields is capable of, and I think, you look at what Shane Waldron, along with Dave Canales, did for Geno Smith. And so the question there is, was it Shane or was it Dave that brought Geno back to, an NFL caliber starting quarterback after he was on the track to be riding the bench for the rest of his career?
Tarbill, I'll tell you why it was Shane, though. Because I watched Jared Goff struggle after Shane left LA. And that was my big thing, is I watched him kind of go into that window from 2019 on and kind of just, end up going to Detroit and then didn't have success again until Ben Johnson came into the room. So I think that was my big thing. Was like, I've seen him have success with a guy like that in the room before. I saw Russell Wilson have success with Shane Waldron early on in 2021 and now Geno Smith. So I think there's a lot of different comparisons. And I don't know who the fuck was his quarterback when he was at Washington. I don't think anybody does, and I don't think anybody cares. But that's just a whole failed experiment in itself. But I do hear what you're saying though. Like I'm kind of with both of you. You know what I mean? Like I hear it, but it's also one of those things where it's like, at the end of the day, I do watch Justin Fields every week, and I do watch Justin Fields get in his own way. I watch him hold on to the ball a little too long, and not longer than Caleb, but he holds on to the ball a little too long, and he's willing to take those big shots when he shouldn't. And, you know, I just think at some point, I was talking about it earlier, and it's one of those things where as a teammate, as an athlete, and as a player, I would run through a wall for Justin Fields. But as a coach, would I go to war with you as my number two? And that's really the question, to where it's like, yeah, it's cool if we're running into a wall together, but is that what we're gonna do every single day? Like, are we ever gonna get through the wall? Are we ever gonna get over the wall? Are we going around it? Like, what are we doing? If you're just bashing our heads in, rushing 1,000 yards at the end of the year, and then looking at the front office and going, "Is that good?" And it's like, no. Like, if 8-8 is the expectation and a playoff berth, we already had that with Nick Foles and Nagy back in 2020.
We were talking about Nick Foles a little bit before you jumped on.
Shout out Nick Foles.
We were
all right.
Yeah, we were chatting Jason Kelsey's retirement speech.
It was too long. I'm gonna say it. It was too long. Shut up.
I think all speeches have kind of gotten a little extreme, right? You know, all these.
Well,
speeches... Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ace.
Nope. Go ahead.
There's the Cliff Notes version out there that's like 9 minutes long, Mike. You can watch that one.
It was bad. I mean, I liked it. Don't get it twisted. Travis Kelce looked good with his little friendship bracelets on. It was cool. Those are my guys too. Travis Kelce's one of my favorite players of all time, not named Devin Hester, or Peanut. But you know, I think at the end of the day, it's like, do we need a press conference every single time somebody retires now? Like, if DeMar Hamlin gets a press conference for his retirement, I'm losing my mind.
I'm out.
I'm losing.
All right, I'm head out. No, but ultimately, you know, I think that's a good point, Mike. The ceiling is not 8-8, and it shouldn't be for the Chicago Bears organization. I guess roundabout leading back to Justin Fields, do you think there is any, I don't want to say any chance, but do you think it's realistic at this point to think that the Bears move on with Justin Fields next year? Do you think there's any scenario that they just trade out of one and say Justin's our guy? Like, could this all be a big chess match? It was last year until 6 weeks before the draft, right? So we're approaching similar time, a similar timeline right now. Could it be a chess match? Could it all be for show? Or do you think the Bears are undoubtedly drafting Caleb Williams at 1? That's it. Closed book. Nothing else to talk about. You know why Ryan Poles is the greatest of all time? Like, an absolute GOAT. Like, the fact that this man is to my left and I'm just in the same screen of Ryan Poles while he's on the phone right now is absolutely beautiful to me, because I'm in the presence of a legend. Ryan Poles is doing something, Tarbill, whether it's working or not. He's doing something without even doing anything. He just lets the media talk. Dave Kaplan, Colin Cowherd, whoever, Shannon, Stephen A, whatever. Right. Everybody talk out your ass for the next 8-9 weeks and sell everybody that we're drafting Caleb Williams. Cool. Caleb Williams hasn't had a single snap since 2023 November. And it's like, even then it didn't look good. So what are we talking about to where now he's Patrick Mahomes? Nothing's changed. And the last time I saw Justin Fields, the whole city screamed, "We want Fields." And now, because we've been listening to Dave Kaplan talk every single day, because that's the only Bears news we get, we're sold on a guy like Caleb Williams. I'm not saying Caleb's not the guy, but what I'm saying is Poles has put himself in a situation to where I look at everything he's done and I've said, wow, without saying a word, you were able to trade that number 1 overall pick because you made everyone think we were drafting Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, even though not a lot of people felt like we were. This is the time where everybody, no, this time's different. This time's different. I'm telling you, if he didn't do it last year, he has to do it this year. Yeah, well, if I thought my dad was back last year, he has to come back this year. That's just, but guess what? I think for me,
I don't know what the market is for the number 1 overall pick right now. I don't know what's going on with Fields or what his market is, but whatever the decision is, I think is the decision. And I think he's been using that media to not only significantly help that, but just boost up both levels to the point to where it's like, well, I just got this offer for Justin Fields. So why shouldn't I trade Fields and keep the number 1 pick if you're not offering me more for the number 1 overall pick? And it's like, well, damn, if they're going to trade this for Fields, now I have to look at it from a whole different perspective on the board. There's so many different ways he can twist this. It's so toxic. It's so disgusting. I love it. It's great.
I love it, he says. All right, bro.
And that's a good point. Like, we haven't really heard anything about
Not a word.
potential value in this first pick, right? You really haven't heard, oh, you know, this team's thinking about offering this or that. It's always just Justin's the one leaving, right? There's the whole concept of trading that pick has kind of flown out the window. And Mike, you and I talked about this, and you brought that same point up about Caleb hasn't played since November. Everybody was all for Justin staying until January, and then all of a sudden the narrative switched. And I think if you go back and look at Justin's numbers the second half of the season after he came back from being injured, you looked at a guy who took better care of the football, made better decisions when it came to finding open receivers. Yeah, sure, he missed some guys. Every quarterback misses an open receiver. Every quarterback doesn't process the field every single time perfectly. So I keep bringing back to this point. If we didn't have this first overall pick, what's the narrative around Justin Fields? No, there is no narrative, right?
Yeah, I think he's a franchise quarterback.
Right, we're going to extend him. He's the guy we're moving forward with. We're going to build this team around him. So why does that have to change? Because clearly you would see something in Justin that would warrant you giving him that extension already, right? But just because we have that first pick, now you're like, well, we could take a chance at a guy that could be Patrick Mahomes. So he has the same similar weaknesses as the quarterback we already have.
So here's the thing, though, Ace. You missed on Patrick Mahomes. You missed on Baby Oil Watson. You missed on CJ Stroud last year. I'm glad the Bears didn't take Bryce Young, and I'm an Alabama fan. But you miss on those 3 guys. You moved up and traded away capital to draft Maserati Mitch Trubisky, who you then replaced with the Red Rifle and Big Dick Nick. Like, at the end of the day, you've made so many mistakes over the last 5 years at the quarterback position. Can you really afford to pass on what they're calling the best prospect since Andrew Luck?
Listen.
Could you afford, and I've talked to Tarbill about it though. Not Tarbill, I've talked to Ace about it. And I want to throw this to you, and if I'm wrong, and if you have the perfect counter to this, I'm ready for it because I haven't heard a single person say it. If you draft Caleb Williams and we go 8-8, and he's just anything under elite, say he's average to below average. And then you watch CJ Stroud win a championship or win more playoff games. Justin Fields goes to Atlanta and takes them to the promised land. Then you watch Bryce Young maybe figures it out 3-4 years from now, or a Jaden Daniels figure it out. Those are 3 already. I could look at 2 guys already, CJ Stroud, Justin Fields, who can have success in other places because CJ's already having success. And I think Justin in the right system can have success. Say Jaden Daniels has success. Say he's not, but say Drake May has success. But say 3 of those guys have success and Caleb's anything less than elite. And you could have had all of them and you got the one guy who 1 doesn't want to be here and 2 isn't who you thought he was going to be, just another Pac-12 quarterback who couldn't crack it. Then what happens?
Tarbill, your biggest argument about it has been his performance against top 25 defenses, right?
Absolutely.
And it hasn't been good. So now
so Ace, let me get what I have to say out here.
Please cook on me because Tarbill, I'll tell you what, right now, me and you, I will never do another podcast ever again if we draft Caleb Williams and one of those 3 guys I named wins a championship before us. I promise you.
All right, brother. Fair enough. No, I agree with a lot of what you're saying there, Mike. Nothing's a sure thing, right? I think ultimately, you said a guy that doesn't want to come here. I think that's been disputed a little bit. Colin Cowherd backtracked and said, Oh, I didn't hear that. That was just my speculation.
I hate Colin.
But there are some weird things going on within his camp, right? His dad's trying to get him partial ownership of a team, trying to skirt around the NFLPA regulations and shit to get him a better than rookie contract and all sorts of things that are going on that are weird out of his camp. And, you know, I go back to Ace brought it up, but I go back to his performance last year against those top 25 defenses, and it wasn't good.
Horrible.
It was 58% completion percentage. I don't know what the touchdowns to interceptions were off the top of my head, but you look at, you know, the Notre Dame game specifically is one that shines out. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, everyone says that, but I don't care if it's the truth. Like, he got picked apart by Notre Dame's defense, and that's what every NFL defense is every week in and week out in the league. And Caleb Williams holds the ball longer than Justin Fields, and that's everyone's biggest knack against Justin Fields is that he holds the ball too long, right?
Yep.
So I ain't going to sit here and argue with you because I agree with you for most of what you said. However, it's like, what if we do miss again? But there's the chance that we take Caleb Williams and we miss, right? Ultimately, nothing's ever a sure thing. I mean, Andrew Luck retired the
third preseason game.
Our guest last week talked about his retirement, and our guy Paris, shout out to him. Hopefully the Bears need a wide receiver, but no, ultimately, man, I mean, nothing's ever a sure thing. I just don't see a reality where Ryan Poles walks up to the podium and says, we're trading our pick to, I don't even know who it would be off the top of my head right now. We're moving back one spot. With Washington, they're giving us one of their receivers, Terry McLaurin, let's say Terry McLaurin. So they're giving us Terry McLaurin, their first round pick next year and a second next year, or something crazy like that. Not really that crazy. That's about the same deal the Bears got last year, right? A player, first and a second. But you go make that trade, and then Caleb Williams comes out and slaps his dick on the table in Washington and leads them to the promised land.
That's perfectly okay.
And they win 14 games next season, and the Bears only win, let's say, 10 games because the schedule looks pretty easy from what I've seen. So be optimistic here. They weren't that far off that last year. If you look at the 3 games that they blew less than 1 score differential leads in the fourth quarter in historic fashion. So, I mean, it's crazy, man. I keep going back and forth in my head, all the different scenarios. What is Poles doing? What could he be cooking up here? And at the end of the day, I'm okay with 2 scenarios. I'm okay if the Bears keep Justin Fields and run it back, trade away the number 1 pick for more capital, or I'm okay if they stay at 1 and draft Caleb Williams. The only way I will be upset as both an analyst and a fan is if the Bears get rid of Justin Fields and trade down like Greg Gabriel's suggesting, and they go out there and draft JJ McCarthy at 9, and we're stuck in a loop of mediocrity because that's what we like to do in Chicago, right?
Yeah. See, I've told Angelo that I'm cool if it's not Caleb, as long as it's Jaden. If it's JJ or it's Michael or it's Drake or one of those guys, I'm pissed. You know what I mean? Shout out JJ, but I mean, it is what it is at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason.
Yeah, we're on the same wavelength there.
Yeah, there's a reason you're in this conversation, and it's not because you were good. It's because you won a national championship. But, you know, I'm on the Jaden Daniels train 100%. And that's why I think I'm so in on Justin Fields, is because I'm in a position right now to say that I still think Jaden Daniels is the number 1 quarterback out of this class. And it's not because he won a Heisman. I give a fuck about the Heisman until Reggie gets his back. I do not care. But, you know, I think at the end of the day, man, like, I've watched what he was able to do at LSU. I watched them do the same exact thing with Joe Burrow, how they were able to utilize him to the best of his ability as both a mobile quarterback and a pocket passer. You look at a guy like Malik Neighbors. If you traded down to 2, take Jaden at 2 and take Malik at 9, or maybe you even trade up to get Malik at 6. If the Giants, I don't know what the fuck the Giants are doing at 6 right now, but if you're in that situation,
that Burrow Chase
Yeah, you get
magic,
that
right?
Burrow Chase tandem that you're looking for. And I think Poles is intelligent enough to understand that as well. I don't think, at the end of the day, we can sit up here and talk about, I have it somewhere written down, 93 touchdowns passing, 27 rushing, 900 rushing yards, 10K passing yards. Like, cool, bro. You played in the Pac-12. What did you win? You lost to Utah. You lost to Oregon. Like, you got your ass kicked
This
by
is
Notre
true.
Dame. Like, I can't name 3 guys on that Notre Dame defense. I'm sorry. And at the end of the day, here's where I'm at. And we've been ranting, so I'm sorry. But like, my big problem is we talk about, oh, well, he's a generational talent in college. So was Justin Fields. So was Trevor Lawrence. And they look like shit. Like, and it's all about where you go. So to your point, I want to kind of draw back. I don't give a fuck if Caleb goes to Chicago or Washington, for the simple fact that, to be completely honest with you, I think no matter what situation it is, if he goes there or here, you're fucked, because it's all about where you go. It's all about where you go in this league. And Brock Purdy is the perfect example of that. If Brock Purdy is on the Chicago Bears, he looks like Matt Barkley of 2016. Period.
Fair enough. No, and that goes back to the illustrious question, right? Is Patrick Mahomes if he was drafted by the Chicago Bears? Probably fucking not.
Well,
I think he's Jay Cutler. 100%.
That's a good comparison, actually. That's a really good comparison.
Okay. Go ahead,
now,
Ace. I know you're chomping at the bit to talk about this.
I love listening to you two talk about this because it's devil's advocate, both, and I love it. But you talk Tarbill about like, well, you pass on this guy, you pass on that guy, you pass on this guy. Okay, right. Well, for 3 seasons before, it wasn't Ryan Poles. It was a completely different guy who was clearly inept at drafting and really getting any good quarterback play on this team. If you look at the quarterbacks, right, the other Ryan. And then Poles obviously kept Fields for a reason. They wanted to see what they had. Last season was built entirely to lose. You took everything off of that team to break it down to the very bottom.
Yep.
To get as close to the first round pick as you could get, which you got, and you did what you needed to do with that pick. Then you go and you start the rebuild. This isn't supposed to be, hey, we're the shittiest team in the football. Now all of a sudden we're going to be playoff contenders. You talked about it. There are 3 games this season that the Bears blew in historic fashion. Historic fashion.
Absolutely.
Most teams don't do that in a season. The Bears did it 3 times in a season. I don't put that all on Justin Fields. I think if they're able to close out those games, you're looking at a 10-7 team, and this narrative is completely different about Justin Fields.
A whole nother conversation.
Exactly. So you're sitting at 7-10, 10-7 in that range right now. I would say is where your team is. Why is it that Caleb Williams is going to come in here and all of a sudden that's the missing piece? There's other holes on this team that need to be filled before just the quarterback is the one that takes them to that next level. Offensive line help. You need a center. You need another edge rush. You need to get a safety position.
Hold on. You just traded a pick for your starting center.
Okay.
I like Ryan.
I don't mind him
as a dog.
I don't mind him, but I think if you're the Bears, you need to look in the draft for a guy in 3rd or 4th round that you can be like, hey, this is our center. We're going to develop this guy.
I don't. To Tarbell's point, I think that's why the move was made. There's not a lot of centers that. First, there's no center, and if I'm wrong, strike me down. If the next Jason Kelsey is found in the 2nd round, that's perfectly fine. But like, I haven't seen anything from anybody yet that says out of the 2 first-round picks that we have, one of them is going to be a center. Like, they're all offensive tackles. They're all guards. I don't see there being a center. But to Tarbell's point, like, and to your point too, I play this game with myself a lot, and I think it's fun. I switch and pretend like I'm happy and that I'm a different fan base. And I'm like, all right, well, what if I'm the Chiefs? What if I have the number 1 overall pick and it's Caleb versus Mahomes? What am I doing? Oh, I'm taking Mahomes. Okay, if I'm Baltimore, I have Lamar or Caleb. What am I doing? I'm taking Lamar. And if I have Hurts and I'm in Philly, am I taking Hurts or am I taking Caleb? Or even if I'll even stretch it out. If you're the 2 white boys that everybody loves, if you're Josh Allen or Justin Herbert, are you taking them for the Chargers and the Bills, or are you taking Caleb Williams? And I think I don't know if you guys would agree, if you're every single one of those organizations, you don't take Caleb Williams. So there is some truth to, if you have to question if Fields is your guy, it is a red flag. You know what I mean? If
Right.
there's a whole case to be made that Fields can't have success at the NFL level after 3 years, and then there's a whole nother case that says he can, it's kind of worrisome. But it's at the same time, it's like, we're Bears fans and we watch this guy every week. We're not just watching the highlights.
Right.
I know what he
Right.
can be, and I know what he's been put up with. I know the Bill Lazor, Matt Nagy, and Luke Getsy era. Like, I've watched it. I watched you
Right.
run the ball 6 times straight up the middle in week 18 and do or die against Green Bay, like, for no reason. Like, I watched you do that. I watched you look at Roshan Johnson in the eyes and tell him, today you're Derrick Henry. Like, what are you doing? Like, and at the end
I
of the
watched
day,
you
though,
throw 33 screen passes in
Yes.
one single game.
300 in one single season is crazy.
Right.
But I
Wild.
do think like that game I play with myself is where I kind of like, I'm a huge Fields fan, man. I've been watching Fields since high school. We're the same age, Max Prep Sports, always online. I always talk about that. Like, we're always watching
Right.
him, Ja, Zion, Tyler Hero up in Wisconsin doing his thing. We watch those guys, Trevor Lawrence. And the problem with it was always like my attachment with that. So when I go, okay, well, if I'm the Chiefs and they have Mahomes,
Right.
am I taking Caleb? And the problem is, if I look at 15 plus teams in the league and they say no, and I'm the only one contemplating it, that kind of shows me maybe shit's not as sweet as I thought it was with Fields.
So,
And I agree with that. I mean, I definitely think Fields has his ineptitudes when it comes to certain things on the football field. I do think that great point of, if you're still questioning it after 3 years, then maybe you have your answer. But I also do see, like you said, I watched the offensive coordinators that he had. I watched the head coaches that he had. I watched the limited weapons he had last season. Then you bring in DJ Moore and look what happened. I'm not saying that he didn't get through his progressions like he should, because there was more that he should have gone through. But you gave him that number one weapon, and then look what he did with that weapon.
Right.
Right.
It was like, what, 1,300 yards,
Yeah.
8-0 interception touchdown ratio. Like,
Yes.
dude did not throw a single pick when he targeted DJ.
Exactly.
So
clearly that chemistry and that trust is there between him and DJ. And whatever people want to say, oh, well, that's all he went to. It worked.
Well, Tyler can't catch, so that's my big thing. Tyler Scott, I love Tyler Scott, but Tarbell's talked about it a lot, and I love when he talks about it. Is like, man, I saw so many gimmies right in the end zone, or even just like 40-yard
just
bombs.
hit him in the hands, man. Right in the numbers, bro.
Right off the chest too. That's the if it touches your chest, bro, just go home.
That was St. Brown in that one game last year where the Hail Mary got tipped and he was just sitting down and the ball hits him in the hands and he doesn't wrap up and the Bears lose that game.
Mooney did it. Bro. Everyone did it. Like,
so before we move on to the Bulls
counter,
real quick,
Ace,
hold on. I feel like we've beat a dead horse with this Bears talk, right?
No.
You don't think
just
so?
hold on.
All right.
1 second. Give me 5 more minutes.
All right.
Mike, who was the last Bears receiver other than DJ Moore to catch a touchdown pass?
For the Bears?
Yep.
This season, the last wide receiver, I'm trying to even think of who was on the depth chart. It wasn't Chase Claypool, I tell you that.
It was Chase Claypool.
Was it?
Absolutely. Chase Claypool, other than DJ Moore and Cole Kmet. Chase Claypool.
Are you serious?
Was the last wide receiver, at least. So take Kmet out of the equation.
Right.
Mooney didn't have a single touchdown all year.
I think he had one.
I think it was in the beginning
Chase
of the year.
Chase Claypool had one the week before he was traded.
He did.
And
Mooney only had one touchdown.
Yeah.
All season. And
Chase Claypool was the last Bears wide receiver other than DJ Moore to score a tutty.
And that's okay.
He wasn't even on the team week 10.
That's okay. Like, and I think why that's okay is you look at what Patrick Mahomes did outside of Rice and outside of Kelsey. Fuck the rest of them. Like, that's just what it was. Like, we just told Kadarius Toney, dude, just show up. We're not playing you though. In the biggest game in the Super Bowl, you're not playing. That's cool. We're gonna deal with Hardman. We're gonna deal with all this other stuff. Like, the problem was, and to Foster's comment, Mooney did have a fucking touchdown, and he just decided he didn't want to catch it in the end zone in Cleveland. That's what happened with that.
Absolutely, that is true.
But I think at the end of the day, man, like, Tyler Scott can't catch for a lick. And Velus Jones is a walking fumble. I don't even call him a walking fumble. I just call him a walking turnover because he always amazes me on how he turns over the ball, whether it's a fumble or
absolutely
a drop or whatever. I mean, man just
What
might
was
as well
it
just
that-
hand it to you.
that end around that they ran
Mhm.
with him. As soon as he touched the ball, I'm like, something bad's gonna happen here, and then he gets
Yep.
hit and fumbles.
But that's
and
what I'm so like. Why though? Like why would I target anybody else? Like Justin Fields understands what it takes to play amongst greats. He's played with Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, all these different guys, and it's like Jackson Smith and Jigba, and it's like, dude, I'm not throwing to Velus Jones, Tyler Scott, and Dante Pettis. Like it's not happening.
You watched it last season. The guys were getting open, missing the ball. He'd throw it to him. It hit him in the hands, and they fucking miss it. Robert Tonyan had one in the Cleveland game, I believe, that hit him in the hands, and he fumbled it or bounced it forward. Like, once that happens with your wide receivers, you just lose all trust in everybody, and you go to your safety valve, who was DJ Moore and Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet had a hell of a season last year, and I only see that getting better if Fields stays. You give Fields, and Poles seems to have a problem identifying wide receiver talent, is what I'm kind of seeing as a pattern here. So are you going to trust that he can pick the right free agent wide receiver? Or do you maybe take a chance, trade that pick, and get a guy that everybody is talking about in Marvin Harrison Jr. that's kind of a can't-miss wide receiver? You know what I mean? That's just my thought on it.
I love Marvin. Marvin's a dog. I just think Marvin's health terrifies me, but other people don't want to talk about that.
We have Paris Campbell on.
He overslept for his pro day, like wasn't at the media at the podium when he was.
No, wait, Tarbill, don't do that though, because fuck that whole thing. That whole thing was trash. Like you had Hartman running with wide receivers because he was the only quarterback that wanted to participate in the dash. And it's like the whole thing, like, nah, bro. He participated in what he needed to. I think a lot of people.
I think
are mad.
The combine is going to kind of go away here.
I'm just trying to stir the pot.
Oh, of course. But
the combine's totally worthless.
Like I said this, I heard. I'm not. Man, I try so hard to like keep peace, but I always end up saying some dirt shit. But there's a couple podcasts in the Chicagoland area that feel some type of way because they didn't get to talk to Marvin Harrison Jr. at the combine. Shut the fuck up. Be real. You're salty and you're gonna down this man because he didn't want to talk to you. Be real, bro. He doesn't want to talk to you because it doesn't fucking matter. I've heard so many people going at the Super Bowl, watching the Super Bowl. We're all at the Super Bowl thing. We're all at the media at the podium. You walk up to Patrick Mahomes. You have an opportunity to ask him a question, and you ask him about Caleb Williams. Fuck you. Now you're looking at the NFL Combine, and you're asking Caleb Williams what your favorite color is. Fuck you. And it's like, if I'm Marvin Harrison Jr., fuck you. And that's what it is. Because respectfully, even as someone who's in media, I cover the sky all the time. Kalia Copper and I are like this. But I know there's days Kalia Copper just looks at me and I look at her and I'm like, it's all good, man. I don't got nothing for you. Because it's like, what the fuck do you want? Like, I'm at the combine and you're going to ask me these piss questions. And it's like, at the end of the day, just let me run my 40. Let me do my little dancey dance. Let me jump up and down for coach when he needs me to, and let him know what a hard count is, unless you're Mitch Trubisky. And it's like, I'm gonna go home. Like, this whole like media narrative of like, oh, these guys, they need to talk to us. No, I don't. You're not drafting me. NBC isn't drafting me. ABC's not drafting me. CD's Nuts isn't drafting me. So I don't care.
Well, just like everybody
you're good. You're good, man. I was specifically saying he didn't speak at his scheduled time.
Fuck all. I wouldn't talk to any. I would talk to you two, and that was it. Because I know you guys.
Like
think at this point, I'm going up and I'm talking to 30 people who won't give a fuck about me, what I'm doing tomorrow, because all they want is 3 seconds of me, just like Caleb Williams, saying that Aaron Rodgers is his favorite quarterback. You asked a question and now you're mad that he answered it.
Right.
Well, okay. I'm not mad at Aaron Rodgers as his favorite quarterback. I'd have a problem if he said Jay Cutler and Mitchell Trubisky was his favorite quarterback. I'd have a problem with that.
Oh, you're hurting Ace's feelings. Ace loves Jay.
I was just about to say that I love this Mike that we have on the show tonight. This is my favorite version of Mike I've ever had on the show.
I got to say something funny, and Ace, you're probably going to hate me for airing this out, but a couple months ago, Ace was all emotional, maybe had a couple drinks in his system and in our group chat, and he was sending us messages like, I miss Jay Cutler. and he sent me
I
a
was.
highlight.
I was
reel
watching highlight
of
videos of
Jay
Jay Cutler.
Cutler's career, bro.
I was watching him.
and I was like, God damn, he was a gunslinger.
No,
I
he
forgot.
was.
Like,
I was watching him. I was telling Ace, you could literally watch my live from earlier today. I was like, man, the other night, I don't know what it was. It started watching like every night. I tuck myself in. I prop up my pillow. I do my little mouthwash, and then I watch Josh McCown highlights of when he was a Bear going up against the Packers, because that's what I do. Because I'm still obsessed with Josh McCown to this day. He won over my heart in 2012. But with that being said, in all seriousness, I'm on YouTube and I find Jay Cutler highlights, and I'm like, fuck it, why not? And then I made a little video on TikTok of it, and I'm watching it, and I watched it through its entirety, and through the good, through the bad, whether he threw it to the wrong team or not, that shit was a fucking missile, and it was a dart. And I looked at that, and that's why I'm having serious thoughts about Caleb. As much as I want Justin Fields, I watch Justin and I go, he ain't throw that bitch like Jay did. Like, that's just real. And very few guys do. And that's why I said if Patrick Mahomes came to Chicago, he'd be Jay Cutler. Because I think Jay had a lot of the tendencies that a guy like Patrick Mahomes has. Does he have sidearm? No. But he was definitely a mobile quarterback. Right. He could sling it far. He's not Joe Milton whipping it, whipping an orange 120 yards. But he's definitely one of those guys you could look at and say, man, that guy's a dog. So Jay was a big part of why I kind of started thinking maybe we do take a different quarterback.
Fair enough. Great conversation.
I mean, I'm just gonna say nothing was better than watching Jay on that back foot launch the fucking ball 3 times to D'Angelo Hall.
To be fair to Tarbell's point too, and I'm not saying Tarbell said this, but it's also the other side playing devil's advocate. It's also fuck Jay Cutler. Like, Jay did not give a fuck about me, so I don't give a fuck about him. But I watch his highlights and I'm like, it wasn't as bad as my dad made it out to be when I was 12, just trying to understand why we were yelling at the TV. But it's like, maybe we're more mad about the 6 OCs in 8 years, but whatever. Like, I see both sides that Jay did not give a fuck.
Mike Martz was the best offensive coordinator.
Or the fact that they traded a Hall of Fame tight end because he didn't fit their system. There's a lot of
I've heard rumors that Jay didn't like him. So I don't know what's true and what's not. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it is true. Right. I'm just saying I also heard Brian Urlacher, and it's not a rumor. This is from Brian's mouth. Yeah, me and Jay never talked. Me and Jay just worked together. Like, that's red flag number 1. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying Chris Jones and Patrick Mahomes are best friends, but you would imagine they have a good relationship. And it's like Jay just kind of 9-to-5'd it. And if that's how you want to go about it, that's cool. I'm not mad at it, but I can't respect it.
Right.
Speaking of respect, our dude Flus is out and about with out with his haircut over here at the Bucks game with LaFleur.
It's tough, bro. It's the Flus beard. He goes from like my annoying uncle to like that guy's kind of a cool substitute. You know what I mean?
Yep.
He teaches English. He's a cool guy.
Well, I mean, we did have one more topic, but
to LaFleur about Aaron Rodgers.
No, he's probably trying to
I imagine I would bet you $30 that they were both equally talking shit about Luke Getsy. I promise you.
Probably. They're like, thank you for taking him away from our staff. Oh, thank you for fucking destroying our quarterback.
Yeah, fuck that guy. He's out in Vegas now. Let's see what he can do.
Fuck him.
Mark Trestman is also out there in that same.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Assistant.
I did see that. Crazy. It just makes me listen, kids. If you're listening to this, I'm not saying you don't have to work hard. All I'm saying is, no matter how bad you are, someone somewhere is going to give a fuck, and hey, someone's gonna notice. Whether it's 10 years later and it's irrelevant, you'll always get another opportunity somewhere.
We're gonna have to soundbite that for later. That's going in his next intro.
That'll be in the next intro video. Yeah, definitely.
I didn't say it. Stay in school.
Oh, well, I mean, we had one more topic.
Mike just basically said it doesn't matter how ugly you are. Somebody out there is gonna fuck you.
100%. Somebody somewhere.
You just have to find that somebody.
That's okay. You have time.
Oh man,
this has been the best Mike experience I've had.
I'm having a day. I'm having a day because people were testing my gangster today. So I'm I'm just living today.
Well, I'm
just
glad that
raw
we
dogging
got to experience it on this show because it
Yeah,
has been
for
a
sure, man.
fucking blast and a joy having you on.
Just Mariano's does not need a security guard when I'm walking out with a fucking toothbrush is all I'm gonna say about that. That's why we go to Jewel Osco. This episode is brought to you by Jewel Osco. And if you shop at Mariano's or you work at Mariano's, why are you wearing a suit to sell fucking apples? I don't know. But at the end of the day,
I don't know.
I got my toothbrush and my receipt, so nothing happened. But somebody thought I was stealing a toothbrush, which is fucking out of your mind.
Hey, that's all right, bro. Somebody, the Walmart greeter out here.
The worst,
My
dude.
wife-
Those are the worst.
My wife got one of those spin mops the other day. I don't know if you know what I mean by that, but
Yeah.
push it down in the bucket, it spins, wrings itself out. Ain't no way I'm fitting that bitch in a bag. It's a mop. So the guy at the door is like, "Hey, stop! You got something not in a bag. I got to look at your receipt." And I'm like, "It's a mop, dude. That's like the 15th least valuable thing in this cart that I purchased." So I'm with you on that. I totally understand.
I didn't realize that people steal mops and toothbrushes so much down there, man. Like,
I don't know.
the fuck?
Just a bad day.
You got different problems up there in Wisconsin, T-Pain.
Yeah, I'm stuck here. That's the biggest problem. But anyways, we did have another topic, but Tarbill, I think we're kind of cutting it on time here, right?
Yeah, we are actually about at time. I got another obligation here in about 10 minutes. So Mike, thanks for joining us, man. Explosive content as always. Be sure to go follow our guy Mike. Mike, tell everybody where you're at.
Oh, man. Well, right now, I'm out of my damn mind because of what happened today. But you can also find me on TikTok, Instagram, theshy.kid. We've been doing stuff over there, and I've been seeing some people trying to duplicate what I've been doing on other pages. I'm on one today. I'm gonna be in a lot of people's DMs, and I'm gonna be posting a lot of things throughout the day because I don't like the way some people are moving. But with that being said, guys, make sure you always hit that follow button to my guys up top because they do amazing things with mops. And I am so excited to see what you guys are going to be able to do next week. I'm going to check you guys out later. Polls, baby. Do your thing, baby. Cook.
All right, Mike. Thanks, man. And he's out just like that. Our guy, Mike Hughes. The shy.
We should get a clap after. Like we should get a clap sound so that when people leave, we can clap them out of here.
Yeah, that's something we can talk about after the show. But yes, I agree with you. Man, some electric Chicago Bears talk to start. It is Aces Wild.
Yeah, I mean, this was supposed to be all.
We told you all the show was going to be wild in the name. And it sure
was
it
was a wild show tonight. I loved the Mike that we got tonight. I loved it. He was
that heated. Was fired up on 10, Mike.
Fucking right it was, and I will have him back on that level any fucking time he wants to be, and he could call anybody out on my podcast. I don't care. I really don't.
All right.
This is the Wild West over here now. We're playing with different house rules, right? We're playing with, as they say in the casino, we're playing with house.
Packers suck.
Packers suck. I forgot that drop is there, but yeah, Packers suck.
All right, everybody. What a way to start off the new show here on the Undefeated Sports Network. This show was different. This show was on Wednesday. For those of you that don't know or those of you that are new, our shows usually are live Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. That is the slot that Ace and I will be moving back into starting next week.
I just was impatient and wanted to go a day early. Sometimes you go
totally
early.
Fine. I'm glad you were impatient because it worked out well, but we appreciate each and every one of you that tuned in tonight. Please be sure to go like, subscribe, and follow to the Undefeated Sports Network, the fastest growing Chicago sports network on all social media platforms. We are on Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, Spotify. We're everywhere. Go check us out, guys. Appreciate the support as always, and everybody have a good night. We'll see you next week.